Hey, English learners, welcome back to Mr. English Fluent Tutor, and welcome back to another wonderful episode. I am Anna.
And I am Abel.
Abel, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What do you think about when you hear the words understanding English but not being able to speak it?
Honestly, Anna, my first thought is that the person probably has a weak grammar foundation or maybe a bad memory for vocabulary. I always assume that if someone cannot speak, it simply means they have not studied enough yet. Maybe they need another full year of sitting quietly and reading big, heavy textbooks before their mouth is ready to open.
Oh, Abel, I completely understand why you would think that, but I want to gently correct something really important here. Understanding a language is actually what we call a passive skill. Your brain absorbs, recognizes, and processes information coming in from the outside. Speaking, on the other hand, is an entirely active physical and mental skill. It requires a completely separate kind of training, and no amount of silent reading alone will fully develop it.
Wow, that actually makes a lot of sense when I stop and really think about it. So the two skills are connected, but they are not the same thing at all. You're saying that even if my brain is completely full of English words and grammar rules, my mouth still needs its own separate practice to actually produce those words smoothly. That is a completely different picture from what I had in my head before.
Exactly, Abel. And that is honestly one of the most common misunderstandings that holds so many learners back for years. You can spend thousands of hours listening to English movies, podcasts, and songs. Your brain becomes very comfortable receiving the language, but the physical and mental act of forming a sentence and pushing it out through your voice is a completely different muscle, and that muscle needs its own daily workout.
That is such a powerful way to put it, Anna. It reminds me of someone who reads every single book about swimming but never jumps into the water. They understand the theory completely. They know what the freestyle stroke looks like. They can even explain it to someone else. But the moment they stand at the edge of the pool, their arms and legs have absolutely no idea what to do because they have never actually practiced the physical movement.
Yes, that is a perfect connection, Abel, and I love that you brought swimming into it because it maps so beautifully onto what language learners experience every single day. Now, I want to introduce a specific analogy that I think will really help our listeners visualize exactly what is happening inside their heads when they understand perfectly but freeze the moment they try to speak. I call it the water bottle analogy, and it's really simple.
Oh, I love a good analogy, Anna. Please go ahead, because I feel like our listeners right now are nodding along and relating to everything we are saying. A lot of people watching this have probably had that exact moment where they watch an English show, understand every single word, feel so confident, and then a native speaker says something simple to them, and suddenly their brain goes completely blank. Please share the analogy.
So imagine your brain is a clear glass water bottle. Every movie you watch, every podcast you listen to, every grammar lesson you study is like pouring more water into that bottle. Over months and years, the bottle fills up beautifully. You have so much water in there, so much English knowledge sitting inside your head. But here's the key question. If you never tilt the bottle, if you never tip it forward, does the water come out by itself?
No, it absolutely does not, Anna. The water just stays sitting there, completely still inside the bottle. And I think that's such a clear picture of what passive learning feels like. The knowledge is genuinely there. It's not missing, it's not broken, it's not lost. But if the learner never tilts the bottle by actually opening their mouth and practicing speaking out loud, that water, all that beautiful knowledge, never flows anywhere useful.
Exactly right, Abel. And tilting the bottle is the act of speaking. It's describing what you see around you out loud. It's repeating a phrase from a podcast you just heard. It's answering a question out loud to yourself in the mirror. Every single one of those moments is you physically tilting your bottle and letting the language flow outward. The flow gets stronger and smoother the more you practice tilting it every single day.
That makes so much sense, Hannah. And what I really like about that image is that it takes away the shame, because a lot of learners, and honestly, I've done this myself, used to feel like not being able to speak meant something was fundamentally broken or wrong with them. But the bottle analogy shows clearly that nothing is missing. The water is already there. The knowledge is already inside. The only missing habit is the daily act of tilting in pouring.
Yes, and that feeling of shame or embarrassment is something I really want to address warmly and directly because it's one of the biggest invisible barriers that learners face. Many people know the word passive, but let's make sure everyone listening today fully understands what it means in the context of language learning. Passive means receiving without producing. When you listen or read, your brain takes information in, but you're not required to create or generate anything new going outward.
Oh, wow. I love that clear distinction, Anna. So passive is basically the input side of the equation. You are a receiver. Your brain is working, it's processing, it's storing, but it's not being asked to produce anything on command. And I think most learners spend 90% of their study time in that passive receiving mode without even realizing it. They think studying means consuming more content, more videos, more lessons, more episodes, without ever switching into output practice.
That's 100% accurate, Abel. And it brings us to a word I want to highlight right now for everyone listening. The word is activation. Activation means switching your brain from passive receiving mode into active producing mode. Activation is what happens when you stop watching the English video and start talking about it in English out loud yourself. It's a deliberate, conscious shift from input to output, and it feels uncomfortable at first because it's genuinely hard work.
Right, and that discomfort is real, Anna. I remember the first time I tried to speak about a topic I understood perfectly in my head. I could hear the podcast about it, I understood every idea clearly, but the moment I tried to explain it back out loud in my own words, everything felt scrambled and slow. The words I needed were somewhere in my head, but I couldn't reach them fast enough. It felt incredibly frustrating, almost like the words were hiding from me.
And that experience you just described, Abel, has a very specific name in language learning. The word is retrieval. Retrieval means pulling a word or phrase out of your memory and using it in real time during speaking. Listening is passive storage, but speaking demands active retrieval. When you hear a word in a podcast, your brain stores it. When you need that same word during a conversation, your brain must retrieve it under pressure, and that retrieval muscle takes time and practice to build.
That's such a helpful word, Anna. Retrieval. I think every learner has felt that exact retrieval struggle. You know the word exists, you've heard it before, you would recognize it immediately if someone said it to you. But in the middle of a real conversation, your brain just can't find it fast enough. And then you feel stuck, you feel embarrassed, and you stop talking. But now I understand that the retrieval is a separate skill from the storage, and both need independent practice.
Perfectly said, Abel. And that moment of freezing mid-sentence is actually connected to our next analogy, which I think is going to be really meaningful for a lot of learners today. I want you to imagine a room with two windows. One window is cloudy, foggy, and gray. When you look through it, all you see is the image of yourself struggling, freezing, making mistakes, and being misunderstood. That cloudy window is where a frustrated learner spends most of their mental energy and attention.
Oh, wow, Anna, I already feel that image deeply. Because so many learners, and honestly, I've done this myself, spend hours replaying their worst speaking moments in their heads. That moment when they said the wrong word in front of someone, that time they forgot a simple sentence completely, that conversation where they went silent and couldn't recover. All of that mental energy goes into staring through the cloudy window, and it just reinforces the feeling of permanent failure.
Exactly, Abel. And here is the powerful shift. There is a second window in that room, and it is on the opposite wall. This window looks out over a beautiful green garden. When you turn around and look through this clear window, you see something completely different. You see all the English words you actually do know. You see all the grammar patterns you already use correctly. You see all the phrases you can already say with comfort and confidence right now, today.
That is such a beautiful image, Anna, and it genuinely changes the emotional frame completely because when a learner focuses only on what they cannot do yet, they feel paralyzed. But when they deliberately turn toward the green garden window and count what they already have, they realize the gap is not as enormous as it felt. They already have enough building blocks to start speaking, even imperfectly, even slowly, even with pauses. The foundation is already there waiting to be used.
Yes, Abel, and I want to pause here and define the word fluency for everyone listening, because it is a word that gets misunderstood very often. Fluency does not mean speaking English perfectly with zero mistakes, zero pauses, and a flawless accent. Fluency in the real world means being able to communicate your ideas smoothly enough that the conversation continues moving forward. A fluent speaker can be understood clearly even with occasional pauses or small errors along the way.
Oh, wow. I really needed to hear that definition when I was earlier in my own learning journey, Anna, because I spent so long believing that fluency was this impossible, perfect, native-like peak that I could never realistically reach. And that belief stopped me from speaking at all, because I thought if I was not perfect, then I should not try. But now I understand that fluency is about smooth enough communication, not flawless performance. That is such a freeing and encouraging reframe.
It really is, Abel. And speaking of reframing things in a freeing way, I want to move into one of the most practical tips we have for learners today. It's about simplifying the language you use when you speak. A lot of learners freeze because they try to build very complicated, perfectly structured sentences in their heads before allowing themselves to say a single word out loud. And I call this beautiful opposite idea the clean knife analogy. Let me explain what I mean.
Yes, please, Anna, because I think I have definitely been guilty of this one personally. I remember trying to construct this massive, multi-clause, grammatically perfect sentence in my head before speaking, and by the time I had mentally assembled the whole thing, the conversation had already moved on and my moment to speak had completely passed. So the pressure of trying to be perfect before speaking actually stopped me from speaking at all. It's such a counterproductive trap.
Exactly, Abel. So the clean knife analogy works like this. Imagine you're trying to cut a piece of fruit. You have two options. Option one is a complicated, heavy, multi-part tool with many extra attachments and settings that takes a long time to set up. Option two is a simple, clean, sharp kitchen knife that you pick up instantly and use with one smooth, confident motion. The clean knife wins every single time in a real kitchen moment.
And in speaking terms, the clean knife is a simple sentence using words you already know very well, right, Anna? Instead of trying to say something like, I was wondering whether it would perhaps be possible for you to give me directions to the nearest station, you just say, excuse me, where's the train station, please? Both sentences deliver the message, but the clean knife version comes out instantly, smoothly, and confidently, without causing a massive mental traffic jam.
Yes, 100% able. And using simple, clean language is not a sign of low intelligence or limited vocabulary at all. It's actually a sign of strong communication awareness. Native speakers do this constantly. They use short, clear sentences in everyday conversation because the goal of real speaking is always to be understood, not to impress people with complex grammatical structures that slow your whole mind down under pressure.
That is such a relief to hear, Anna, and it connects beautifully to something I want to bring up because I think it's one of the most powerful mental shifts a learner can make. There's this very common inner voice that speaks up inside a struggling learner's head, and that inner voice says things like, I'm a terrible English speaker. I will never hold a real conversation. My English is just too broken and embarrassing for anyone to understand.
Abel, I hear that inner voice described so often by learners, and it breaks my heart a little every time because that voice is not telling the truth. It is simply telling the learner's current story without accounting for where they are going. And that is exactly where I want to introduce one of my single favorite language tools for learners who are dealing with that harsh inner voice. It is not a grammar rule. It is not a vocabulary list. It is one single magical little word.
Now you have me genuinely curious, Anna. What is the word?
The word is yet, just three letters, Y-E-T, yet. When your inner voice says, I am a terrible speaker who will never hold a real conversation, you simply add the word yet to the very end. I am not a confident speaker yet. I cannot hold a long conversation yet. I do not have the vocabulary I need yet. Suddenly, the sentence stops being a final verdict and becomes a description of where you are on an ongoing journey.
Oh, wow, Anna, that is honestly such a small word with such a massive emotional impact because the sentence without yet feels like a permanent closed door. It says, "This is who I am, and this is the end of the story." But the sentence with yet feels like an open door with a path leading through it. It says, "This is where I am right now, but the journey is continuing, and the destination is still absolutely reachable if I keep going forward."
Beautifully said, Abel. And the word yet is directly connected to something researchers call a growth mindset, the belief that abilities are not fixed but can be developed through consistent effort and deliberate practice over time. A learner with a fixed mindset says, "I am not a speaker," and gives up. A learner with a growth mindset says, "I am not a fluent speaker yet," and keeps practicing their pocket coins every single day until the yet disappears.
That makes so much sense, Hannah. And I think this is also a great moment to talk about something that holds a lot of learners back, even when they genuinely want to practice speaking every day. And that is the fear of being judged or evaluated. So many learners feel like every time they open their mouth in English, there is some invisible expert standing nearby with a clipboard, ready to grade their grammar, mark their mistakes, and shake their head disapprovingly.
Yes, Abel, and this is where I want to share what I think is one of the most comforting and liberating reminders for any learner who wants to start practicing speaking at home. Here it is. There is no teacher hiding behind your sofa. When you sit in your living room and practice describing your day out loud in English, there is no examiner there. There is no invisible judge with a red pen checking your sentence structure. It is just you and your voice.
Oh, I absolutely love that, Anna. No teacher behind the sofa. Because I think so many learners have accidentally turned their private practice space into a mental exam room. They imagine being evaluated even when they are completely alone. And that imagined evaluation creates the same freeze, the same anxiety, the same hesitation that they feel in a real conversation. But when you remember that your living room is a judgment-free practice space, everything becomes so much lighter and freer.
Exactly. And that word hesitation is actually one of our key vocabulary words for today's episode. So let me define it clearly right now for everyone listening. Hesitation means that brief pause or moment of uncertainty that happens just before you speak or just in the middle of speaking. Some hesitation is completely natural and normal for every speaker in every language. But when hesitation becomes a long, frozen silence, it is usually because the learner is waiting to be perfect before allowing themselves to speak at all.
Right, Anna, and the beautiful solution to excessive hesitation is practice in a safe, low-pressure environment, exactly like you just described. When you practice speaking alone in your room with no judgment, no audience, and no social pressure, your brain starts to build faster retrieval pathways. The words start coming out more smoothly. The hesitation becomes shorter and shorter over time because the pathway between your passive storage and your active output is getting wider and stronger with every single practice session.
Yes, and building that pathway is really the heart of everything we are talking about today. And I want to add one more beautifully important idea before we begin reviewing our keywords together. I want to talk about the pace of speaking itself. Many learners make the mistake of thinking that fast speaking equals confident speaking. They hear native speakers talking quickly in movies and they think that speed is the mark of fluency. And they try to match that speed immediately and fail, which makes them feel worse.
Oh, and I'm so glad you're raising this because I made exactly that mistake for a long time. I thought speaking fast meant speaking well, so whenever I practiced, I tried to rush my words out as quickly as possible to sound more natural. And what actually happened was the opposite. My pronunciation got sloppy, my grammar fell apart, and my brain couldn't keep up with my mouth. I was running faster than my own thinking could manage, and the results sounded much worse than slow, careful speech.
Exactly, Abel. And this is where I want to share our final analogy for today. And I think it's the gentlest and most encouraging one. Imagine you're walking through a park on a slow, sunny afternoon, and you have a friend who walks a little more slowly than you. This friend is not lost, this friend is not broken, this friend is simply enjoying the walk at their own comfortable pace. And if you slow down and walk beside them, you arrive at the same beautiful destination together.
And spoken confidence is that slow friend walking beside you, right, Anna? It won't suddenly teleport ahead of you and arrive at the destination in a single giant leap. It takes its own natural pace. But if you keep walking, if you keep collecting your pocket coins, if you keep tilting your water bottle and practicing your clean knife sentences, your slow friend of confidence gradually catches up, and one ordinary day you realize you're both walking at the same comfortable, natural rhythm.
That is such a wonderful way to put it, Abel. And I want to gently remind every learner listening right now that the pace at which your speaking confidence develops is not a measure of your intelligence, your talent, or your worth as a language learner. Every single person who can speak English with ease today was once exactly where you are right now. They understood the language deeply, but struggled to produce it, and they crossed the river one stepping stone at a time.
Absolutely, Anna. And I think that reminder is so important because the comparison trap is real. Learners look at advanced speakers online and feel like they should already be there. But what they do not see are all the awkward, imperfect private practice sessions that those advanced speakers went through before they reached that level. Nobody starts at fluency. Fluency is always the destination at the end of a long, consistent, messy, beautiful, imperfect speaking practice journey.
Beautifully said, Abel. Now, I want us to do something really useful for everyone listening, and that is to take a proper, detailed look at some of the most important words that we have been using throughout our conversation today. These are words that relate directly to language learning and speaking development, and understanding them clearly will help our listeners think more precisely about their own English journey. Let us start with the first one, which we already defined, but I want to reinforce it. The word is passive.
Right, passive. Passive means receiving or absorbing without actively producing or creating. In language learning, passive activities include listening to podcasts, watching videos, and reading texts. You are taking information in, but your brain is not required to generate new language on its own. A great example sentence for passive would be something like, "My English comprehension is quite strong because I have spent years building passive listening skills through daily podcast practice."
Perfect example, Abel. Now, our second key word for today is one we introduced earlier in our conversation. The word is activation. Activation is the process of switching from passive input mode into active output mode. It's the moment when you stop consuming language and start producing it. An example sentence for activation could be, "The best way I found for activation of my speaking was to spend 10 minutes every evening narrating my thoughts out loud in English before going to sleep."
Oh, I love that example, Anna, because it is so practical and immediately usable. Narrating your thoughts before bed is such a low-pressure activation exercise. Our third word is one that connects deeply to the speaking freeze experience, and that word is fluency. We already defined fluency today as the ability to communicate ideas smoothly and continuously enough for a conversation to keep moving forward naturally. A great example sentence for fluency is, "I am not chasing perfect grammar, I am building real fluency so that I can express my ideas clearly in everyday English conversations."
Excellent, Abel. Now, our fourth word is one that sits right at the heart of why so many learners struggle to bridge the gap between understanding and speaking. The word is barrier. A barrier is anything that blocks or prevents forward movement or progress. In language learning, emotional and psychological barriers like fear of judgment, fear of making mistakes, and the pressure of perfectionism are often much more powerful than any grammar or vocabulary gap the learner actually has.
And a great example sentence for barrier would be, "The biggest barrier to my English speaking was not a lack of words or grammar knowledge, it was the deeply rooted fear of sounding foolish in front of other people." And I think most learners listening right now can personally relate to that example sentence in a very direct and honest way. The emotional barrier is so often the real obstacle, far more than any language knowledge gap.
100% able. Now, our fifth key word for today is one we talked about in detail earlier, and it is such a crucial concept for understanding why speaking feels hard, even when listening feels easy. The word is retrieval. Retrieval means actively pulling stored information out of your memory and using it in real time. When you speak, you must retrieve words, phrases, and grammar patterns quickly and accurately under the natural time pressure of a live conversation happening in real time.
And a clear example sentence for retrieval is, the more I practiced speaking out loud on my own every day, the faster my retrieval speed became, until the words I needed started arriving in my mind quickly enough to use them smoothly during actual conversations. That is exactly the experience of building retrieval skill through consistent speaking practice. It's genuinely like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the faster and stronger it becomes over time.
Beautifully expressed, Abel. Now, our sixth keyword for today is a word that many learners know from their grammar studies, but might not have connected to their speaking experience yet. The word is comprehension. Comprehension means understanding the meaning of language that you receive through listening or reading. Strong comprehension is wonderful and necessary, but comprehension alone, without the matching practice of active speaking output, will not automatically produce speaking fluency on its own.
Right. And a perfect example sentence for comprehension is, my reading comprehension in English is already at an advanced level, but my spoken fluency is still developing because I've been focusing much more on input than on daily speaking output practice. I think that sentence describes the exact situation of thousands and thousands of English learners around the world who are listening to this podcast episode right now and nodding along in complete recognition.
Absolutely, Abel. And now our seventh and final keyword for today, which connects so directly to the experience of speaking anxiety that we have discussed throughout our whole conversation. The word is hesitation. We defined hesitation earlier as the pause or moment of uncertainty that occurs just before or during speaking. Small, brief hesitation is completely natural and happens in every language for every speaker. But excessive hesitation that causes long silences is usually rooted in the pressure of perfectionism or the fear of judgment.
And a relatable example sentence for hesitation is, I noticed my hesitation getting much shorter after I started practicing speaking alone every day because my brain gradually learned to retrieve words faster without waiting for everything to be perfectly formed before allowing my mouth to open. That is honestly the real cure for excessive hesitation. Not waiting for perfection, just practicing regularly in a safe, low-pressure space where the teacher is definitely not hiding behind your sofa.
I love that you brought that back, Abel. No teacher behind the sofa, ever. Okay, we are moving beautifully through our episode today, and I want to give Abel a chance to bring everything together in a wonderful summary before we close out and give our listeners their community challenge. Abel, can you walk everyone through the best methods we covered today for moving from passive understanding to active daily speaking? Take your time and make it feel warm and connected.
Of course, Anna, and thank you for that. So today we covered so many genuinely actionable and encouraging ideas. We started by understanding that passive comprehension and active speaking are two separate skills that need separate practice. We used the water bottle image to remember that knowledge sitting still inside your head never flows out on its own without the daily habit of tilting the bottle through real spoken output. We talked about turning away from the cloudy window of frustration and looking through the green garden window to see all the language you already possess.
That is a wonderful start to the summary, Abel. Please keep going because our listeners need to hear all of it pulled together clearly and warmly.
Absolutely, Anna. We talked about crossing the river one stepping stone at a time by collecting small daily pocket coins of spoken practice, just 10 minutes at a time, describing your room, repeating podcast phrases, or narrating your morning routine out loud. We introduced the clean knife idea, reminding everyone to use simple, clear sentences they already know well, rather than freezing while trying to construct a grammatically perfect masterpiece before allowing themselves to speak a single word out loud.
Excellent, Abel. You are doing wonderfully. Keep going with the rest of the ideas from today.
Thank you, Anna. We talked about the magic of the word yet, transforming harsh inner judgments from permanent closed doors into open doorways on a continuing growth journey.
We reminded every listener that there is no teacher hiding behind their sofa and that private, imperfect, low-pressure practice at home is exactly how the brain builds the retrieval pathways that eventually produce smooth and confident real-world speaking. And finally, we talked about the slow friend, reminding everyone that speaking confidence walks at its own gentle pace and will absolutely catch up if you keep moving forward consistently.
That is a perfect comprehensive summary, Abel, and I am so proud of how you brought every single idea back together so clearly and warmly. I want to say one final thing to every learner listening right now before we close. You have been listening to this whole conversation today. You have understood every analogy, every vocabulary word, every idea we discussed. That means your comprehension is already strong and beautiful. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from a very real and solid foundation.
And that foundation is worth celebrating, Anna, because so many learners discount how far they have already come. If you listened to this entire episode and understood the ideas, you have already proven to yourself that your passive English is working beautifully. The only next step is to tilt your bottle just a little today. Say one sentence out loud, describe one object in your room, repeat one phrase from this very episode. One small action is your first stepping stone.
And that brings us to our community challenge for today. And I am so excited about this one because it is specifically designed to move our listeners from understanding to active speaking right now, in this very moment. Here's what I want you to do. Go to the comments section below this video or podcast episode and write down one sentence in English out loud before you type it. Actually say it with your voice first, then write it. The sentence can be as simple as, "Today I learned that speaking needs separate practice."
Oh, I love that challenge so much, Anna, because typing it after saying it out loud means the learner has already taken a spoken action. They have already tilted their bottle just a little. And reading other people's comments and responses will show them that thousands of learners around the world are on the exact same journey, facing the same hesitation, collecting the same pocket coins, and walking forward together, one stepping stone at a time. The community makes the journey so much warmer.
It really does, Abel. And to everyone listening, remember that every confident English speaker you admire went through exactly the same experience of understanding more than they could say. The gap you feel between your listening and your speaking is not a permanent wall. It is a river with stepping stones already placed across it, and you have everything inside you right now to begin crossing. The water is already in your bottle. Now it's time to start tilting.
Beautifully said, Anna. And I just want to add one final personal encouragement before we sign off today. Do not wait until you feel completely ready before you start speaking. Readiness is not a feeling that arrives on its own before practice begins. Readiness is actually built through practice itself. You get ready by doing the thing imperfectly, repeatedly, and bravely in your private, low-pressure spaces until the confidence quietly catches up like that slow, warm, steady friend on an afternoon walk.
I could not have said it better myself, Abel. What a wonderful episode this has been. I genuinely hope that every single learner listening today walks away feeling not just more informed, but more encouraged, more hopeful, and more ready to tilt their bottle and take their first speaking step today. Remember, the gap between understanding and speaking is not a gap of ability. It is simply a gap of practice, and practice is always within your reach, starting right now.
100%, Anna. And I want every listener to know that we genuinely believe in your journey. We built this episode for you, with you in mind, at this exact pace, with these exact words, because we know how hard it is to bridge this gap, and we know how absolutely possible it is when you have the right mindset, the right strategies, and a warm community walking beside you every single step of the way forward.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep speaking with confidence and ease. This is Anna.
And this is Abel, and you have been listening to the Mr. English Fluent Tutor Podcast. Bye-bye. Take care.
And hey, before you go, click the next video right now to keep your English progress moving forward smoothly. Your next lesson is already waiting for you, and it's going to be just as warm, just as practical, and just as encouraging as today. We'll see you there.